The penultimate episode of Amphibia, All In, is officially here, and while this episode will probably be split up into I'm assuming a 4-parter for syndication, it really is cut and edited like a movie. There really aren't any gaps edited into the episode to allow for commercial breaks. It really is just one continuous episode from beginning to end. And it was pretty impressive. It was about 45 minutes long without commercials. And it did a really good job of using that real estate to give us effectively the expected conclusions to a whole bunch of things, but to also throw in some surprises, too. Like, for example, Andreas has a pair of giant herons that he has under mind control fighting for him in his takeover of Earth. And it turns out they're the same herons that killed Sprig and Polly's parents, allowing them to get some resolution for that. That's something that I genuinely didn't expect to happen. I assumed that what little emotional resolution we had gotten for that already was all that we were going to get. Or that if we did get more, it certainly wouldn't involve them literally using Leaf's hunter's dance to calm the herons and sway them to their side as a sign of overcoming their trauma. The rest of this episode, though, is pretty straightforward. The military does try to fight against Andreas, but his technology is just too superior, even though it can be beaten by swords. We see that Anne's parents did, in fact, explain everything to Mr. X, and now they work with him, or at least they're working with him for now, and they're all kitted out with cool future tech that it would be really nice if the military had access to that right now, but, you know. And while Marcy is put into a simulation in her mind where she gets to go on a chill, happy fantasy adventure with her friends, the only thing that she's ever wanted, the others enact a plan to get in through a gap in the shield to shut the shield down so that a proper attack can be made against Andreas's floating castle, which degenerates into Marcy fighting against what is effectively the Core's gaslighting in her own mindscape, Sasha and Grime fighting against Darcy and her cool Spinel scythe, and Anne fighting in Super Saiyan form, or whatever, against Andreas in a giant robot of an old prehistoric amphibian. And for the most part, this was all just blockbuster action. Like, what character stuff was in here? Especially at the beginning of the episode. I guess technically Frobo getting a new body is character stuff for him. He can now basically just spawn whatever weapons he wants out of his shoulders. It's very ridiculous, but very anime, and the show is very anime inspired, so it worked really well. There wasn't a lot at the beginning. We did see they hole up in the school, and Anne finds an essay that she was supposed to write for the principal, because the principal recognizes that she could be pushed around by her friends, because she cares about him so much, but also because she doesn't seem to really know what she wants. It was a "Who are you?" essay, and she never really started it, and it gets her thinking about that again. Gets her thinking about the kind of person she wants to be. And that helps her give a few different inspiring speeches throughout this episode. Like, she gives Sasha a speech about how it doesn't matter who they were, it only matters who they are now. And that later helps give Sasha the strength that she needs to pull ahead of Darcy and actually win the fight. Which was very cool, but even that, we knew that was something that was coming. The Anne is kind of a pushover who lets people walk all over her thing has been set up basically since the beginning of the show, as well as her lazy attitude towards things, her go-with-the-flow nature. And while there's nothing necessarily wrong with being a go-with-the-flow kind of person and letting your friends sweep you up on fun adventures or whatever, everything in moderation, right? It's something she needs to learn. And what I think this show is particularly great at is Anne feels like a completely different person than she did in Season 1, without feeling like a completely different person than she did in Season 1. This is clearly the same character. She's just a more complete, more mature version of her. But because Marcy never really took the time to recognize that the others had grown as much as they did, like, she didn't even really ever get to see grown Sasha, right? She's still operating on the assumption that they're the same people that they were back then, and so is Darcy, and that gives them a bit of an advantage. And it's Anne's growth into someone who can genuinely inspire people that helps them all to understand that when they need to. It's very cool. Like, one of the best things about this show, and I haven't talked about it a lot, I talked about it a little bit in the live stream of my reaction to the episode that went up last night, but I don't talk about it a lot. One of the best things about this show is Anne's little inspirational speeches. They're just so good. They're quick and succinct, but they say everything they need to in a very short form kind of manner, and they genuinely make you feel kind of hyped up. It's really freaking cool. Most of the character stuff, though, happens later when the planters confront the herons and fight them long enough to get the control collars off of them, but then essentially forgive them by turning them to their side and then using them against Andreas later. When Sasha, after Grimes sacrifices his arm to protect her at one point, is able to stand up to Darcy and even manage to, even after suffering a grievous wound herself, cut the cable connecting Darcy to the core proper, which I'm assuming would have fried Marcy's brain, except that Marcy also, at roughly the same time, rejects the fantasy offered to her by the core, which I assume also broke her out enough that by the time the core detached from her very forcefully, she was able to survive. Even Marcy apologizing after everything, even though she didn't really need to anymore, right? And it shows growth in her character. She's able to confront her friends with what she's actually feeling, right? But the most impressive character stuff here, and this was always going to happen, like, I was unsure if it should or if it would work if it did, but it was always going to happen. The most interesting character stuff, the most extensive character stuff here was probably what happened with Andreas. The seemingly blank letter that our heroes found in the area underneath the planter's farm. It was a letter from Leaf. We all knew that, but it was a letter from Leaf to Andreas. Just basically reiterating all of the sentiments that she had, had for him over time. And once they discover that it's a letter using Mr. X's spy tech, and then Sprig goes to confront Andreas and reads it to him, we get to see little flashbacks of Leaf starting the Planter family, which was very, very cool. The characters still don't learn it. I think they have the evidence they need at this point to piece it together, but they still haven't, learned it. But we get to see it, and that's what really matters. And it's sweet, and it's heartfelt, and it reminds Andreas that his friends did care about him, and now he knows that they didn't just abandon him completely, that Leaf, at the very least, was still thinking of him and still hoping that he would do the right thing. And the absolute instant that he has a better choice than the core, and he's faced with the option of turning against the core in the limited way that he does, he takes it and earns his redemption, I think at least. And it turns out he's like a cyborg or something, that's how he's lived so long. But basically he takes a hit full on from Calamity Ann that he didn't need to, in order to ensure his own defeat as the core tries to take over control of his giant mech, and basically wins the fight for the heroes. He contributes to the heroes winning this conflict. It was, again, like one of Anne's speeches almost, handled very succinctly. They didn't really spell out what he was doing. They just let him do it and let his actions speak for themselves. And now I'm pretty cool with this guy now. I don't hate him anymore. I kind of hope he survives. It's unclear whether or not he's going to survive being as damaged as he was, but I kind of hope he does at this point. There were some surprises here, though. There was no fight between Andreas and Sprig and Grime. I really expected something like that to happen. Basically, Andreas versus Leaf and Beryl, And the other two girls do not unlock their Calamity powers in this episode. Their love for each other and the love that Andreas had for Leaf do end up contributing to the resolution of things, kind of like I theorized. So that was pretty cool. But they don't get their Calamity powers in this episode, and there is one more episode left, because it turns out the core is still alive, and now back on Amphibia, returning the castle and making sure everything's okay back there. The moon starts to fall towards the planet, Majora's Mask style. So there's that. And I assume they're going to get their Calamity powers to deal with that, right? To deal with that and whatever is left of the core. But they did not get them in this episode, and I expected they would. I expected that the final episode would just kind of be an epilogue. I mean, it could still be. The final confrontation with the core could take, like, the first act, and then the epilogue takes up the entire second half, right? But if I'm not mistaken, it is all one episode. I could be wrong about that. It could be 2 episodes, like most half-hour blocks of the show are, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to be reacting to that too. Probably not when it airs, but at some point next weekend. As soon as I can, basically. So we'll see. We'll see together. Yeah, I don't have much more to say about this one. The action was really good. It was really well animated. But there wasn't really anything here that I don't think we as a fandom collectively didn't expect to see happen in some form or another. It was done really well. Like, that's the best thing I could say about it, is while I think we expected most, if not all of this stuff to happen in some form or another, the form in which it took was really good. It was really well done. And I gotta say, man, I'm real bummed, because even though this episode was lit AF, the show's almost over, and this is my favorite show running right now. There isn't another show like this. There may never be another show like this. It's so hard to even describe what it's like, right? I talked about this a little bit in the live too. It takes itself seriously, but in a lighthearted kind of way. You never really feel like things are going to go too bad for these people. You always kind of feel like everything is going to work out. It allows the show to have a lighter tone while still dealing with serious subject matter, which is something that a show like The Owl House, like, it can still be funny and it can still have small moments, but it's become this big epic, right? Amphibia is a big epic too, but it still feels like a funny cartoon at the same time. And there's nothing else like that right now, and there may never be again, and I am going to miss it a lot. And now there's only one more week of it before it's gone. Except not really, because, especially in hindsight, now, knowing how important some of the more fillery Season 1 episodes were for things aside from just growing Anne's character with the message of the week, I think it's worth it to go back and review Season 1 episode by episode. So I'm going to be doing that too. So we still have those to talk about at least. I don't know, if is there supplementary media for this show anywhere? Marcy's Journal is apparently going to be a thing. I'll pick that up and look at it for you guys. So it's not quite over yet. We still have several more episodes to go. But the new stuff's almost done. And that sucks. It has been a journey, though, hasn't it? And it really is true that 9 times out of 10, the journey is more important than the destination. All that said, though, guys, what did you think of the Amphibia episode All In? If you have seen it, let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. What was your favorite part of the episode, for example? I didn't go into super specifics about this one. So let's get a discussion going about what everybody's favorite moments were in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, you might as well like the video, share it with anyone else if you think would enjoy my content, subscribe if you haven't. You can also check out links to my various social medias as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.